faces from every nation. I wanna find a place that's for conversation, where they discuss all the latest movies, or when something big happens in the news. See, that's us, what are we talking about? So what are we talking about today?
Well, hello everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Carcast. Sorry if the audio is not quite as good on this episode. I forgot the adapter to plug my microphone in, so working off of the mic that's just part of the camera. So if it's bad audio, you'll know why. But anyways, thanks for joining me. I had a pretty good week this week. I don't know, just like most weeks, I guess. Look at how fast this has devolved to nothingness. Anyways, let's just get right into it. I'm talking this week about the, I don't know what to call it, Unbreakable verse, I guess. The M. Night Shyamalan's superhero shared universe kind of a thing. So I saw Unbreakable for the first time Saturday. Oh, I better change that. Saw Unbreakable for the first time on Saturday, and I really enjoyed it. It's definitely a little dated. Like, you can tell it came out late 90s, early 2000s, whenever it came out. But it's a really good movie, and it's unique in terms of what a superhero origin story is like. And they do a good job of showing both the side of the hero and of the villain, and you really understand kind of what their motivation is, and it's done really well. I definitely enjoyed Unbreakable quite a bit, but I also knew going into both Unbreakable and Split that these two movies were connected. I didn't have the luxury of having already seen Unbreakable and then just going into Split in the theaters or anything like that. I already knew that these two were connected, and so I was just kind of seeing like what the big hubbub is about. Everybody talks up these movies, so I thought I'd check them out. And yeah, Unbreakable was absolutely awesome. I haven't watched a lot of M. Night Shyamalan movies. I've never seen Sixth Sense, for instance. I believe I've seen Signs. Definitely saw The Happening. So, like, that's the thing. Of the M. Night Shyamalan movies I've seen, they haven't necessarily been his best. And so, I kind of don't necessarily love him as a director. But now, with watching Unbreakable, I really, really enjoyed it. And it shows that like, there's a couple of shots that it seems like, I don't know, maybe he's trying too hard to be cool and unique or whatever. But it could also be just that movie is old enough that maybe he invented that thing and I just didn't realize it, and it's just people have been copying him since the release of that film. I'm not sure, but yeah, like I said, there's one or two shots that I would have just chosen a different shot, but all the content of the film was quite good. Excuse me. And I really, really enjoyed it overall as a superhero origin story. It's one of the better ones ever made, I think. And it gets me excited to see what the new sequel could be, Glass. But yeah, so I watched Unbreakable, and I mean, if you haven't seen Unbreakable yet, I would highly recommend seeing it. It's definitely high in the ratings for me, 2 or 3, depending on what you like. I think that you could enjoy this movie even if you don't like superhero films, because it's not a regular superhero movie. In fact, if you didn't know it was a superhero movie, like, that's the thing, it does a good job of kind of playing with some of the tropes of superheroes, like the idea that basically superheroes are a thing in the real world, and comic books are based off of it's almost like somebody heard stories of this long ago, and the stories get passed down from generation to generation until somebody turns it into a comic book, essentially. And so the one character, Mr. Glass, played by Samuel L. Jackson, basically spends a lot of his life searching for these type of people because he is at the exact opposite scale of the spectrum, where he has a degenerative bone disease called osteogenesis something, which is a real disease, and it causes you to have brittle bones, easier to break, right? And then people called him Mr. Glass because, you know, because he was easily broken, and he broke like glass. And part of the thing of who he was in terms of the whole extremely breakable bones, partly that mixed with how he experienced the world, people making fun of him and all that kind of stuff. Plus the idea that the reason why eventually he was only coming outside to get comic books, it sort of caused him to grow up a certain way, where he became more invested in the comic books and stuff, and started to think that maybe there's something to them more real. And then eventually he becomes like a high-end art collector / dealer, focusing on classic comic book things. Ironically, at one point in the movie, Bruce Willis, this is right near the end of the movie, right before Bruce Willis finds out the truth about Mr. Glass. So Bruce Willis is standing there talking to Mr. Glass's mom, and she's like talking up one of the pictures or whatever, and she's like, they discuss how they know each other, or how they know of each other through Sam Jackson's character, and they both kind of like look over, and Sam Jackson's character sitting in a wheelchair talking to somebody, trying to sell a picture, whatever. The picture that he's trying to sell is a Nick Fury of S.H.I.E.L.D. Comic issue, and I just thought that was kind of funny, seeing as how now Sam Jackson is Nick Fury of S.H.I.E.L.D. But yeah, like that's something that's cool, is that it's a comic book movie. It's not a comic book movie, sorry. It's a movie that comic books exist in this world, but then also superheroes exist. And it's almost like the superheroes don't know that they're superheroes, especially Bruce Willis's character. They do a good job of showing why he wouldn't know he's a superhero, even though I think he did know deep down, because he faked getting injured from that car accident with that he got in with his wife. He didn't really get injured, and he just used it as an excuse to stop playing football. And so I don't fully know what the deal is there, whether or not he knew the whole time and he was just didn't know the fullest extent of his powers, or what was going on. But he if I was him and I didn't he got thrown from the car, didn't have a scratch on him, I think I would have done some testing on myself after that to see the full extent of my capabilities. But it's not until he survives another tragedy in the train crash and then Mr. Glass reaches out to him. I think if Mr. Glass wouldn't have even reached out to him, he never would have really accepted that idea that he was unbreakable. But then, yeah, Mr. Glass reaches out, and they go through this whole thing. But it's just interesting how this movie goes. And the thing is, I knew Mr. Glass was the villain the whole time, but I didn't know the full extent of his villainy. So that was still a little bit of a surprise for me when at the end it turns out he was the one causing all these natural disasters, or not natural disasters, but he was causing these massive destruction and disasters to try and find basically Bruce Willis's character, or somebody like him, somebody who is the opposite of Mr. Glass in terms of how Mr. Glass is extremely breakable. He wanted to find somebody that's nigh unbreakable. And he eventually finds it in Bruce Willis. One thing I will say, though, is that even if I didn't know that Sam Jackson was the bad guy, I kind of would have thought he was a bad guy, because very early on in the movie he has a line where he basically says, like, you're the opposite of me in terms of, like, we're the same, but opposites. And to me, that means they're both supers, but opposites, right? So then he's super, he's unbreakable. This guy is his Joker in terms of Batman and Joker, right? Like the yin and yang of it. They are one, but they are also opposites in some ways. Their powers are opposite, but they are still both of this almost new species of human, or alternate species. But yeah, overall, I definitely loved Unbreakable, and it was a really cool introduction to this universe. Now, going into Split, I already knew it was part of this shared universe. So I didn't have the surprise at the end, and I was also kind of looking for things to tie it together while I was watching the movie. And I honestly think that, so you could make this movie not be part of Split, or not be part of Unbreakable, simply by removing one scene at the end that basically takes place after. It's almost like a, not post-credit scene, but because it takes place before the credits, but it's an add-on where they're basically, you're in a cafe and all of a sudden there's people talking about, oh, this crazy dude who's like a villain, he kind of reminds me of this other guy that was around a little while ago, and then it shows Bruce Willis and he's like Mr. Glass. If you took that scene out, you could argue that it wouldn't necessarily be a part of the universe, but it's so tied in together that if it wasn't part of that universe, I would have felt like Shyamalan was just almost ripping himself off and doing too many things that were too similar. But because they're in the same universe, it works perfectly, and I love it. The way that they almost scientifically explain the superheroes in this universe is extremely unique, and it's almost like, it reminds me a little bit of X-Men, but even more real world, because in X-Men it's like you have a mutant gene and it manifests itself as like, oh, ice powers, or you can just change into anyone, or like weird fantastical things. Whereas so far in the Unbreakable universe, the powers that we've seen aren't fantastical. It's just they push the human limits to the extremes. So Mr. Glass is like, there's literally people in real life. One of my stepbrothers, actually two of my stepbrothers, has this exact same disease that he has, the osteogenesis imperfecta, or whatever it's called. And then Bruce Willis's character is just the opposite of that. Instead of having a degenerative bone disease, he almost has extremely resilient, not just bones, but skin and all that kind of stuff. And you could feasibly imagine that could happen, especially the way they explain it in the movie, where it's like, if I find myself at this end of the scale, all easily broken, it's only natural to assume there would be somebody at the opposite end of the scale, and that would be Bruce Willis's character. And then in Split, Professor X's character, what's his name, James McAvoy, again, it's something that is pseudo-based in reality and real science, where when somebody has split personalities, if the ailment is extreme enough, they can almost have different physical attributes based on their alternate personalities, and this just takes that to the extreme, so much so that it's like he literally almost physically becomes another person. And that was one of the coolest parts about Split. Easily the coolest part about Split is James McAvoy's acting. Incredible. Like, there's literally scenes where he changes from being one person to another person in the same scene, and it's not just like he just does a different accent. The way that he carries himself, his entire essence of who he is, changes in front of your eyes. It's incredible to watch. But yeah, that's something I really like, and I'm really looking forward to see what comes next, because I love this universe that he's setting up, where it's like everything's kind of based in reality. Even though it's still a little bit fantastic, it's not so much so that, like X-Men, where it's like, okay, I don't, like, even if mutants existed, I don't, like, Hugh Jackman's powers of rapid healing, okay, that's feasible. But the idea that somebody can just, like, you know, turn their skin into diamonds and read your mind, it's like, okay, really? Some of the X-Men powers are feasible, and some of them are very not feasible. Whereas in this, so far, everyone that we've seen is very feasible. And I also think Anya Taylor-Joy's character, I don't know that it shows her having powers, but I'm going to assume she clearly does, because everyone has undergone something extremely traumatic to get their powers, basically. As far as I know, Bruce Willis had that drowning incident as a child. And then, maybe Mr. Glass doesn't. I don't know. Because Mr. Glass was already Glass in the womb, because he came out with, like, both broken legs and, like, a bunch of shit like that. So maybe it doesn't necessarily happen. But I do think that Anya Taylor-Joy will become something, just because of the amount of time they spent on her backstory and character, and they clearly set it up where she has had tragedy in her life, and that could very well mean she is going to have some sort of power as well. And that was something that it was kind of heartbreaking to watch develop throughout the movie. And at first you kind of got a weird feeling about her uncle, and then eventually it's just like, yeah, it makes you uncomfortable, but it's well done storytelling is the thing. Like, it wasn't just there for the sake of being there. It makes sense, especially if you've seen the other movie in the universe with Unbreakable. But yeah, I didn't quite like Split quite as much as I did Unbreakable. But again, I went into it with a certain mindset that a lot of people didn't. But one thing I would say is that you can tell that the director has had years and years to improve on himself, because the directing in Split, I think it's a lot better directed. Like, that's the thing. Unbreakable is extremely well directed, but this is just like, he's kind of perfected his thing. And that's the thing. He's a good director. M. Night Shyamalan has always been a good visual director and technical director. It's just, he hasn't necessarily always had the best stories for his movies, right? And so this is him coming back with some actually good stories. I still have never seen The Visit or anything like that, but definitely check out these two movies, Unbreakable and Split, if you haven't seen them, because it's a new cinematic universe that we didn't even know was going to be a cinematic universe. Kind of reminds me of Cloverfield, where it's just like, all of a sudden, we just find out that there's a Cloverfield shared universe where, with 10 Cloverfield Lane, we didn't even know there was an inkling of that until the first trailer came out, and it was like, oh wow, this is related to Cloverfield. And then with Split, we knew even less about it, because it wasn't until people saw the movie that they found out that it was part of the same universe. And that's something that I think is awesome, that he didn't rely on the fact that it was a pseudo sequel or shared universe kind of a thing to sell the movie. He just, sold the movie on its own merits, and then it just happened to also be part of the same universe. And I'm excited to see where he goes from here with Glass. Who, I don't know what it could be, what the story will be. I assume it'll be maybe almost a Masters of Evil kind of thing, with Mr. Glass collecting villains to take on Bruce Willis and possibly Anya Taylor-Joy. I don't know. I'm just excited. So definitely check out both of these movies. You know what? I'm going to give them both a 3 out of 3, especially if you like superhero films. This is a very unique set of a cinematic universe. So check that out. And yeah, quickly about reading, watching, or playing. I'm still playing ukulele, and I'm almost done now. I have more than 2/3 of the pages, and now I'm up to the final boss. So in terms of the story, I'm very close to being done. I just have to beat the final boss, and that'll be it. So I'll be able to give a more in-depth review on the page when I do that, once I've completed it. And I really want to beat it soon, because very quickly here, I forget what it's called, Prey comes out, which is made by Bethesda. It's a Fallout / Skyrim style game in terms of it's like a open world RPG, but it takes place in space, in a space station. So it's gonna be something cool and unique. In terms of there's not a lot of really good space based survival games, and so I'm pretty excited to see it, and I want to beat Ukulele before starting on that, because otherwise I'll just never beat Ukulele. So yeah, I'm going to be going hard on that really soon, and hopefully bringing you guys a review pretty quick. But that's going to be it for me for this episode. Once again, thank you for joining me, and thanks for listening or watching, however you're indulging in this. If you want to let us know something that you want us to talk about on the show, or if any of your thoughts, you could either comment in the comments if you're watching on YouTube or listening on SoundCloud. You could leave a review on iTunes saying suggestions or whatever, or you could email us at whatarewetalkingaboutoday@gmail.com, which the email will be down here, or you could tweet at us at whatwetalking. Yeah, it's a pretty easy way to get a hold of us. So yeah, like I said, let me know any of your thoughts, and until next time, man, never stop, never stop. Peace. Well, guys, if you enjoyed this episode of the Carcast, remember, a new episode gets released every single Wednesday at 5 o'clock a.m. So it'll always be there for on your way to work or whatever, however you want to watch it. If you want to see another episode of the Carcast, click up here. If you would like to subscribe to the channel and get updated every time we release new videos, click down below, or possibly wherever. It might be right here. Who knows? I don't. If you are just going down a rabbit hole, just click this one down here. I don't know what it'll be, but it'll be something special just for you.